Now remember, if you were just replacing the clutch, you do not have to drain the coolant. You do not have to remove the coolant reservoir. Okay? So basically, everything, you'll take off everything, but don't touch the coolant, don't touch the reservoir. Alright, those are your main things that you don't have to touch, but everything else basically has to come off. Okay, there is the air valve, the back of the supercharger, which is this piece here. There's also a 7mm clamp right there. Okay, so this whole piece will come off, which I figured you would take off with the air box. Okay. There is an E10 star socket with a 10mm nut that holds the back, so the input to the supercharger, to the output from the supercharger to the intercooler piping, and to the air valve. Okay, it's all connected as one. Now you remove that bolt with that nut, and then they all separate, and then that would make it very easy for you to remove this. But you don't have to. You just got to take off the bolts and lift it up just a tad so you can get the clutch out. Okay, mind you, to get the clutch out. Now if you were removing it to get the supercharger out, there are two 5/16 nuts that hold a bracket to the aux water pump. Okay, flashlight. Aux water pump is that fella right there. So I don't know if we can see. They're right down here. I'm not too sure. There you go. You can see them. They're right there above the red wire. If you can see those two nuts. Okay, those two have to be moved out of the way. All right, this hose has to be out of the way. The output has to be out of the way. These hoses have to be gone. Okay, then there are 4 1/2" or 13mm. You could use either one. 1/2" is a little more tight. There are 4 that hold the supercharger in. So these are connected to the front plate, and then there are 2 in the back. Okay, you remove those 4 and your supercharger comes loose. Mind you, the 2 bolts up top are easy to do. Okay, the 2 bottom bolts have to stay in while you're pulling the supercharger out. Mind you, the 2 bolts also have to be in when you're putting it back. So don't expect to put the supercharger back and leave all the bolts out, because the 2 down here have to be in. So before you grab that supercharger to go put it back in, make sure the 2 bolts on the bottom are in the holes. Okay, the top 2 you don't have to worry about, because they'll be fine. Okay, the whole point of removing the supercharger, okay, to make it easier for you to remove the clutch, which you can do, no problem. You know, it's not, you know, you make sure you don't want to make a mistake. But you don't have to. Okay, you can have it ported. You can port it, or you can have it ported. Make the V bigger on the top. There's not really much you can do on the back side, but on the output side, make the V bigger. You have a lot of room to actually make it bigger and not mess it up. The silencer ports, which are the 2 ovals there's one on one side and one on the other side. You can close those up, weld them up, as long as you got an experienced welder that's not going to warp it. You know, people put like quick steel in it, and I wouldn't feel safe doing that though. You know, I'd rather have an experienced welder weld them up, because then you're not worried about the quick steel getting sucked into the engine per se. Okay. What else we got? You can rebuild it. Rebuild it. I definitely, if you're gonna take it out, rebuild it. Okay. Hands down, rebuild the supercharger if you're gonna take it out. There's no point of removing it if you're not gonna do one of those three things or all of them. Okay. The front plate, if you want to take the front plate off and replace it, since it comes with the kit, if you were to buy it on eBay, it comes with that kit. There are 8 10mm bolts. Okay. If you're going to take them off and put them back on again, I do suggest putting gasket sealer, even though there's no gaskets that go there, just to make sure it's nice and tight and the oil doesn't seep out. But there are 4 bolts. There's 2 on this side and 2 above. So if you're gonna take off the front plate, mind you, the pulley has to be off in order to take off the front plate, because there are 4 bolts in back of the pulley. So you're not going to be able to remove the bolts via socket. You might be able to get a wrench in there, but even at that, it's going to be very time consuming. Now, to put it back on, make sure you don't put the pulley on before you bolt the front plate to the supercharger. It won't work, okay? Lesson learned. I already did that. It's not going to work. The pulley blocks the bolt holes just enough so that you can't even put them in. Now, if you put the pulley on the front plate, you could keep it up, put your bolts in, okay, just so you can wiggle them and then drop them down onto the supercharger, so that, and then screw them in manually. But you're gonna have to screw them in with a wrench, or you're gonna have to try your hardest to actually screw them in until you get tight enough to the wrench. I had to do that because I didn't want to jeopardize pulling it off again and ruining it. Don't do it. Trust me, you don't want to do it. Okay? Basically, after we did all that work, reverse it. Reverse everything. Everything you did, all right? Make sure you don't put the pulley on the front plate before you bolt it to the supercharger. Okay? If you put the output piece on with the 4 bolts from the supercharger to the intercooler, you're not going to be able to fit it back in. Jack up the engine if it helps you. Okay? Just a little bit, just a hair will help you get it out and put it back in if you're taking it out. Use gasket sealer as much as you can, okay? Buy the gaskets. You know, I'm trying to enforce it to you, so hopefully you remember. Alright. So, we're going to reverse everything we did. You're putting the supercharger back in, okay? Well, as long as you took everything out and you tilt it just enough, it'll go back in. Cake. Okay? At that point, you can bolt it back to the engine. Remember, always put the 2 bottom bolts in before you put it back in. Okay? Otherwise, they're not going in. The body of the car, or the frame per se, gets in the way of those bolts. Okay? Bolts it back up, torque specs. I don't remember the torque specs. You know, I didn't use them. But if you're that type of way, do it. Alright. Put some gasket sealer on, put your new gasket on, put the top of the supercharger back on. Okay. At that time, your air valve, the front and back, will line up, so you can put that star bolt back in with the nut and tighten it back up. Okay. You know, don't worry about the antifreeze if this is what you did. Fill your antifreeze up later. If you use gas sealer, wait like an hour or two, let it all dry before you even start the car, okay? Just in case you don't want none getting sucked up into the engine. Do that. Hook up your vacuum lines. Remember where they go. Okay. Hook up your reservoir. Hook up all the hoses. Your refrigerant hoses, your air hoses. Put your airbags back in. You know, once you take it out, it's pretty easy to remember how to put it back in, as long as you don't wait like a week or two. Alright? If you have any problems, send me a comment. I'll respond, don't worry. I respond really quick. I don't have a lot of subscribers yet, but so the response time's pretty quick. I'll help you in any way you can. I've had this car for 6 years. I know how to do pretty much everything with it. You know, if you need help with something, I don't mind helping, you know. I'm pretty damn good with cars. Alright. That's what I got for you. Thank you very much. I'm Kevin. I own digitalworld.net. Digitalworld.net. Links in the description. Please subscribe if you haven't already, which you probably haven't. See you next time, guys. Peace.